There are things that the left needs to commit to, especially if it ever intends to beat back the onslaught of racism, misogyny, capitalism, classism, anti-LGBTQ, and more importantly and currently and very specifically the anti-trans. Or we could sum it all up as beating back the onslaught of right-wing fascism, which I personally must call anti-wokeness. Screw the right's anti-woke agenda. Woke is the only thing that will save this bloody country. Woke is the only thing that will save this bloody planet. And if you notice, only the right wing and liberals are against woke. Anyway, it's time for the left to start setting some rules of conduct, some rules of diplomacy, some rules on our agenda going forward. Because we need to start taking this seriously. And too many on the left make too many mistakes, and those mistakes gives one the impression they most certainly do not take the danger of what's going on seriously. And on this video, I intend to tell you exactly what we all need to do. Because I think 61 years on this planet and 40 plus years dealing with the left sides of these spaces qualifies me to say, hey, this is where you might be getting it wrong. Because I have a few decades of observing this, both IRL and online. Not to mention I'm a boomer, and boomers are always right. If you didn't know, now you know. And don't get me wrong, or get me wrong. It's up to you. The left has been making the same mistakes longer than I've been alive. And that needs to end yesterday. So sit back and listen while this cis black boomer tells you how it is. Oh, and support my channel by liking, subscribing, leaving a comment, joining my Patreon, or sending a donation. Because all of that helps to bring content to a world that sorely needs to be woke AF. Now that we've gotten all that out the way, let's get ready to rumble. Hello, my name is Umar, and I'm unapologetically woke as fuck. And as of right now, I have absolutely nothing to lose. Let's do this. Biologist, leftist content creator, self-proclaimed communist, and superhero-level TikTok creator MIcah Valentine created a stitch from content creator Hilary Agro, who asked,
"Or a communist, please stitch this with your best suggestions for organizing to fight against capitalism."
Now on her video, which you can find in Mika's Stitch, link in the description, Hilary Agro also makes some awesome suggestions within asking that question in her own video. She also has a longer form video where she puts out her suggestions. The best videos are the ones that not only ask a question but can answer it too. Now, while Hilary Agro has some excellent suggestions within her videos and on her channel, and I do suggest you follow both her and MIcah Valentine, this video is going to be based on the stuff that MIcah Valentine says because it aligns more where I want to go with this subject. Because everything they said applies to the left. It goes beyond just if you're declared communist. Because while I don't mind socialism, I do not declare myself a communist per se. I'm woke as f. That's all you need to know. These suggestions apply to anybody who intends to use their power, position, or talent. That includes progressives, communists, anarchists, anti-capitalists, and socialists. Anybody who is against the right-wing agenda, this is who it applies to. Therefore, you can all shut up and listen at some good suggestions on where we need to go to fight the progress of fascism. Because in my opinion, it not only applies to us all, we need to act like it applies to us all, period.
Everything I'm finna mention has to do with building civic and institutional power. It's all about numbers. It's all about bonds, baby. Number one is propaganda. We have got to control the narrative on the internet and IRL. I don't care if it's music, videos, jokes, thought-provoking essays, performative memes, man, all that shit.
Before we go into the narrative part, I want to delve into the numbers. Everyone on the left needs to stop acting like any of the right wing or Trump supporters or MAGA or any of the violent hate groups out there somehow outnumber us. Look, I know 73 million is a lot of people. That's without a doubt. But there are 313 million people in this country. 313 recorded citizens of the United States. If 73 million are right-leaning or violent white supremacists or violent nationalists, that leaves 240 million people who are not. So why do you keep saying things like, half the country supported Trump or half the country supports the right? It's not even a third. Let me say this again. There are 313 recorded human beings in the United States of America. Of that 313, by any metric, we measure roughly 73 to 75 million people follow some form of right-wing agenda. That automatically means that there are 240 million people who don't for whatever reason. But my question to you is, if you're a leftist content creator or media person, why are you repeating the corporate news saying half the country supports Trump, half the country are right wing, half the country are for the anti-trans legislation? No, it's not. It's only the right wing, and they are not in any way half the country. They're not even half of the electorate. If you just go by the electorate. Now, the 73 million people number I just brought up comes from the elections. In the last election, roughly 73 million people voted for Trump. That's how we get the 73 million, because these are people who are taking active actions to show they support this right-wing fascist agenda. But there were 81 or 2 million people who voted for Biden. That is why Biden is president. But what we ignore or we dismiss or we blame is the 80 million people who did not vote. All three numbers does not count in the number of people who voted in other parties or for other candidates than Trump or Biden. But by any metric, no matter how you slice it, even if you do it in statistics, it is not half the country. It's very easy to believe that. It's especially easy for black folks to believe that the way this country has treated us since day one. But what I am laying out to you is the facts don't support that opinion. And it's an opinion. Now, when it comes to corporate news or right-wing media, I know why they push that idea. Because they want to give you the idea that they are bigger than what they actually are. But what do you think you mean when you say the Republicans or the right is dying in their influence? Because everybody is waking up to the fact that this influence does nothing but destroys everything. It is not progress, it is going backward, and we are human beings. Human beings are made to progress, not step backwards. But why do you leftists, especially you content creators, because I'm on YouTube doing this, I'm on TikTok doing this, why y'all keep saying that so arbitrarily? Which brings us to what MIcah Valentine was saying about us controlling our propaganda, us controlling the narrative. The right wing wants to be the only voice in everything. That is their goal. These attacks people suffer is because their main goal, the absolute main goal, is for them to be the only voice. They bitch and moan about censorship in terms of you don't like it when we're racist or transphobic or homophobic or misogynist. That's their idea. That's what they always argue about freedom of speech. I should have the right to say the N-word. I should have the right to be shitty towards women. But they're trying to push a white nationalist, a Christian nationalist agenda. They're both the same thing, but one uses the church and one just uses this idea that somehow white people are the greatest things on earth. But it all boils down to the same thing. That's why they get along so well. They want to control the narrative. That's why they chase you off. That's what Kiwi Farms was all about, shutting down leftist thoughts. Look at how they couch it. We got to stop the leftist agenda. And no one ever goes, well, what's the leftist agenda? To make us be nice to people, to make us be equal, to make us be fair, to make us not be racist or homophobic. They are treading on our religious rights to be absolutely horrible towards all human beings who are not white and us. That's their whole argument. They've been arguing that since the friggin' 70s. You could say a lot longer, but I'm saying when the right moved over to the Republicans, and then Nixon happened and Vietnam happened, and they had their little nervous breakdown, this is the result of it. it. The crazy people are in charge of their party. The people who think Hitler was okay are in charge of their party. But my point is that it is not about their numbers. Yes, if you've got followers, 100,000 people who are amongst those 73 million that would vote for Trump, yeah, that's a lot of people coming to your Twitter. I am going to say that there's a small percentage of that, and it's a significant percentage that's your fault for constantly engaging with these idiots. But in the end, they choose to do the harassment. It is not the content creator fault or the feminist fault that these morons decide to be absolute shits. I mean, because that's the main mark of a racist or a misogynist or a homophobe. They always argue they're not these things with arguments that are these things. I'm not racist, I just hate ends. I'm not homophobic, but why they have to sleep each other? Why are they grooming our children just by existing? You're talking about a group of people who talk about grooming, and 99.9% of the grooming is coming from people within their party who have their beliefs. And they do nothing about these people because they agree with their fascism to come agenda, so everybody will have to listen to me. I mean, Elon Musk is talking about taking away the block button out of Twitter. And he's doing that because everyone's blocking him, except for the right wing. And oops, guess what he found out? They don't make up enough numbers to do anything of any significance. So you gotta get some lefties on and reacting to you. And more people are beginning to learn to stop reacting to these people. Not doing quote tweets or playing these idiots' videos. You know how many people play these idiots' videos? Takes away from them. So they've got to get you to react. They got to get you to do their shit. Because a lot of it is grift too. But it's also them trying to control a narrative. And we've got to control a narrative by A, not repeating the narratives they put out. Cancel culture is entirely a right-wing idea. No, it has nothing to do with the word cancel the way black people use it, none whatsoever. It is something they come up with, and what they mean by it is, I get in trouble for being horrible. The right wing, whose agenda is plain to see, you know, when a monster acts like a monster, you can't be too surprised they're monsters. But another problem we have is a lot of these shitty leftists. What do we do about our problems? That goes from leftists and black people. Now I'm moving off of MIcah Valentine for just a second to push forth my particular agenda. We'll be right back on him in a minute. The problem I'm having when it comes to the shitty leftists who actually push a right-wing agenda is I am boggled by how long it's going to take for you people to realize who these people are. Y'all were shocked at Glenn Greenwald because you ignored half the shit he was doing when he was a so-called leftist. Now let's get to debate bros. How much more crap do debate bros have to do before we declare them as leftists not part of our shit? We have to have a we're not fucking with them policy. That has to be a law now. It's not about oops, they made a mistake and we should forgive them because they're trying to grow. These motherfuckers aren't trying to grow. They are trying to be baby Gamergators. Their whole tactics mirror Gamergate. Everyone keeps saying Vosh is attacked by the right wing. Okay, no doubt. No problem with that. But could you please explain to me why the bulk of his listeners are right-wingers? Why so many right-wingers agree with him and so many of them attack him? Because you know, when the right wing doesn't agree with you and they attack you, you can ask several people who have been in YouTube or TikTok from the beginning what that's like. It is not getting a few hateful tweets, but they all come and pay into your Patreon or send you $10 gifts while they watch you live. That's not how the right wing hates people. Have we all forgotten? If the right wing agrees with what you say and your actions, there is something wrong. We're in leftist politics, whether we're socialists, whatever you want to call yourself. Then the one rule that has to be set is if the right wing is agreeing with me, I have to check what I say. Now, I don't expect debate bros to check what they say. They're horrible people. But no more Glenn Greenwalds. No more Jimmy Dores. I'd love to hear all you leftist content creators when y'all talk about Jimmy Dore now. But when he was a shitty human being from the time he had his own show, and he was pulling shit that was obviously racist, obviously misogynist. Oh yeah, Rational National and the Humanist Report have a lot to say now. But I remember when Jimmy Dore, it was 2021, if I'm correct, or 2022, he came up on his YouTube channel and for about 10 to 15 minutes told this story where he openly sexually harassed Anna Kasparian and then tried to put it off, well, it was her fault because, you know, she was looking sexy and couldn't take a joke. He literally said these things. He told a tale of being an open predator. And I didn't hear Humanist Report saying shit about it. I didn't hear Rational National saying shit about it. I didn't hear Bad Faith saying shit about it. Oh, well, we don't know Breonna Joy Gray ain't gonna say shit about Jimmy Dore.
There was a part of me during the campaign that was like, okay, people want a black agenda. Let's print up some flyers that just lists our entire platform and just write white black agenda at the top of it.
After all,
We can talk about Jimmy Dore can go and kill 15 kids tomorrow, and I still believe in force the vote.
y'all didn't say dick about Jimmy Dore. And that is the kind of shit that needs to change. As soon as he came up with that force the vote bull, every single leftist content creators should have opened or closed their show with saying, we're censoring this, we can't mess with this, screw this guy. When Jimmy Dore was a problem to black people and people of color and women, you dudes were okay. Because, hey, he was part of TYT once and he's a friend and I want him to act shitty. And that's got to stop. Same for black people. Oh, don't get me wrong, black people get it right more than white people do. We did not let Stacey Dash come back for what she did on Fox News during Trump's presidency. Candace Owens can't come in the hood. Though, if I had to see one more freaking debate with her, I'm going to be looking at y'all like, what the hell's wrong with y'all? Why are you debating with this woman? What's the point here? So yeah, it's all of us. We all got our fads who start getting problematic. And once again, I want to make it clear. This is not about they did one thing one time, they're trying to make up for it. It's not about them tripping and stumbling, which you'd expect. Kira Chat does that. But I don't think she's a hardcore right winger or is turning to the dark side or some shit. I just think she's a white girl that can't get past her white girlness. And that is true of us all in one respect. I don't mean our white girls, but our experiences and social engineering that made us who we are. I'm firmly woke as fuck, and even I'm fighting misogyny. I'm talking about my internal misogyny. So it's one thing when we're talking about that. I'm with you. People make mistakes. Okay, no problem. But when people keep doing it repeatedly, debate bros keep having shoe on head.
During a Trump speech, he briefly said during like his normal, where he's like, oh, the radical Democrats are coming. But he had one point where he was like, you know, they do this, and he said, they want to get you fired from your jobs. But that kind of scared me because that is going to become a very important conversation, like in the political sphere soon. People getting fired from, or like being forced to resign, like from college campuses and stuff like that. And it's a real fear that like normal everyday people have.
How are you a left when you have a hardcore white supremacist and anti-feminist on your show? I was told, well, you know, she supported Bernie and now she's changed. She says she's made some mistakes about her past opinion. Sure, and had hurt people. Literally. You don't get past doing that repeatedly over and over again. And if she's gotten past her white nationalist roots, why does she keep cozying up to hardcore white nationalists? What, you think Shoe on Head is going to change Lauren Southern? Amazing Atheist. What, Amazing Atheist gets a pass for all the bullshit he pulled? You know how harassment worked in the Gamergate circles? Do you understand the YouTubers and the bloggers' roles in this? So what is it about Amazing Atheist that all of a sudden we're supposed to say, okay, you know, let's forget all the harm you did. I am not going to forget what he said about Black Lives Matter and Trayvon Martin. So, you know, seriously, that guy. When we find out people are trash, we have to throw them away. It's one thing when you know the system is coming down on people. It's another thing when people are just fucking horrible. Dave Chappelle is being fucking horrible now. You don't get excuses fighting evil by saying, I'm fighting evil by being evil. Transphobia is evil. Get the fuck over it. Homophobia is evil. I know where a good chunk of it comes from. We have to dispense with them, and we have to do it openly. No more Jimmy Dores, no more debate bros, no more Glenn Greenwalds. We need to get hardcore about the people who are absolutely not with us, no matter what crap they talk.
Number 2, we need left-leaning and sympathetic characters in institutions of power and media to help facilitate and protect revolutionary action and help control the professional narrative. And while we're at it, cut it with the anti-voting shit. It makes no fucking sense. It's not revolutionary action. It exists to prevent the strongest enemy from obtaining central authority over us.
Now, MIcah Valentine is pointing out that A, voting isn't useless. If voting was useless, they would not spend so much time and energy trying to get you not to vote. The Democrats and the Republicans have a campaign of making sure you are encouraged to be discouraged when it comes to voting. And from my point of view, that is a lot of time, energy, and a hell of a lot of money to spend on fighting to get people not to do something you think is unimportant. Obviously, they think it's important. But in this process, here we go back to numbers, when numbers are important. Numbers is what can change everything when it comes to voting. So one of the first parts of the strategy is we have to get the numbers. We have to find a way to get these coalitions together. And the hardcore truth is that most of the reasons why we do not have the intersectionality we need, that's the white less for. Now, we're not going to litigate that particular thing right here and then, but what we're talking about is a procedure to move forward for revolutionary action. And the very first thing got to get is the numbers. And every wise and successful revolution, the leaders, the speakers has always said one version of the same things. You have to start with the believers. There is where propaganda or controlling the narrative is important. Let's talk about the Nina Turner campaign for just a second. Nina Turner was outspent. That was her only problem, but she shouldn't have been. We had enough leftist channels that we could have easily countered the onslaught of money they poured into negative advertising. Because our first priority is to get to numbers, that is why the messaging is important. If the messaging is right, we can get the numbers. And we have to get together the people who know how to do this amongst ourselves and have them pump messaging. So now you've got the numbers. You've got the numbers because you're a messenger. The next is to seek people within our own community who can do these things, who are good at. People who are good at outside advertising or IRL advertising. People who are good at social media advertising or internet advertising. In this big soup, when we're trying to facilitate getting better candidates, forming a third party, we have to look within for the people who know how to do this in new and interesting ways. Often we'll have to listen to the young. Sometimes we'll have to listen to their crazy ideas. And the more people you get to come to your side, the bigger your numbers, the better chance of finding these people. I love how numbers are just continuously important. So, okay, what happens next? Well, that's the next thing. You got to strategize. What do you do with the numbers? The next thing you got to do is point the numbers. You've got to have a clear-cut strategy of what you're going to do with the numbers. Voting has got to stop being haphazard. Currently, because of the internet and social media, we have the ability to support candidates no matter what state or city or town they run in. That has now got to be a strategy, especially as you build bigger numbers. The more people you got, the more you're able to find news of what's going on, see what local elections are happening. Charts can be created, and you'd be shocked at how useful those charts can be. So what you got to do is to strategize. Okay, we've got the numbers. Yes, we would love to run for the presidency, but there's some congressman seats we need to fill. There's a bunch of Senate seats we need to fill. One of the first things we've got to do is get the numbers of the right wing reduced in the houses of power while you form your third party. Two things can be done at once. It's not that hard. Okay, it is that hard. What I'm saying is putting your effort into both things should bear better fruit than trying to do everything one at a time. This is where your division of labor comes in. But you've got to be prepared to point your electorate towards specific seatings. Now we see what happens when the right wing targeted school boards. Next time we pay attention and get the nuts out of Dodge. We have to also, as we're gathering people, get over how people want to do the fight. We got to work it into the process. It's got to be part of the mix. You're not going to get away from people thinking they can change the Democrats from inside. And the choice is obvious. The party that wants to keep exploitation and capitalism going, or the party that wants to outright murder people. The party who you can force into some concessions, if not all, or the party who thinks, hey, let's repeat Nazi Germany, because that sounds like something fun to do on a Saturday. This does not stop you from building the third party. Everything we do has got to be a facilitation towards revolutionary action in all forms. We live in a democratic republic. You could say a lot of of things about June 6, 2020. But the one thing people never say is this republic was not going to allow these people to change things. Sure, you can invade the building. Sure, you could be racist and misogynist. Sure, you could spread the feces, mess the place up. But A, you're not changing anything. And B, we will be seeing you again. It is quite obvious that what passes for law in this country is determined to see somebody packed. So at least you know you're still stuck within a Democratic Republic. It doesn't make voting great. It doesn't make the government great. But it does give you the opportunity to get what you need done if you strategize. So when you're pointing those numbers, you've got to strategically go after these Senate seats, these congressman seats. You've got to go after these school boards, these small elections, these assemblymen. Because now you see the kind of power they wield. You need to go after judges too. So you do not just form your coalition to specifically go after only the White House. You target the places you're going to need to support your White House when you eventually win it. So strategy is important. Plan for the big numbers and then plan what you can do with them. Clear division of labor and a clear-cut voting strategy is what is necessary to make the vote happen. And these things are possible if people are willing to do it. So now we've got get the propaganda game, control the narrative, throw out the damn trash, stop letting fake leftists get in our damn way. Use your narrative and hopefully clean house to start radicalizing and obtaining your numbers. Get the numbers for people who can vote and then have a strategy for both division of labor and voting. And there you go, revolutionary action that is footsteps towards change that you didn't think you could do, but is far easier than you think. I mean, it is still very hard. You still got uphill battles to fight, but the procedure in and of itself is not the hard thing. It's getting it done and having the will to get it done. Let's move on to the next suggestion.
Number 3, no more label wars. It's anti-praxis. You're gonna work with an ML. You're gonna work with an anarchist. Get over it. We don't have to be a hive mind. We just have to operate like one.
Now, in my opinion, this particular suggestion goes together with his community cohesion suggestion, but we are going to have to put a little stress on the labels because this also sounds like the type of respectability politics that the white left loves to put on everybody else, especially cis white males, because this does happen to women, black women especially, but white women too, in that everybody is so concerned with what everybody's calling themselves, and I don't understand why. Is that what we're fighting? We're fighting some dude calling himself an anarchists. We're fighting women who believe in feminism. This is what we're having to fight about. There is something to be said about how each of these things are practiced, but that goes into the area of community cohesion. What I'm talking about is how we find these little or minorly big things to argue about rather than arguing with the people we should be arguing with, the people who want to bring in fascism, the people in power. We're trying to change a system. And the one thing you all have got to get clear is we're fighting a system. Yes, there are areas in almost anything I can name that needs to be corrected, some more than others. For instance, the misogyny and the homophobia has to be taken out of all the black movement doctrine. That's gotta go. It's ridiculous now. I know where it comes from, but if you weigh it against logic and reason, they make no sense. You have otherwise great grassroots movements that have been with us for a long time that are getting a bad rap because they refuse to grow out of this nonsense. Homosexuality is not the plan by the white man to sissify the black man. While homosexuality or the modern minority or many other things can be used by this system against each other and black people, that is not the fault of the people who is put upon us, like privilege. People get so tight when you go, everybody has privilege. We didn't give ourselves a privilege. The privilege was set up by this racist capitalist society. The only thing the discussion on privilege is doing is asking you to examine it and use it to your advantage and stop using it against people. Every single white woman who's been labeled a Karen has specifically used their privilege against people, mostly black people. But it's a different thing when those same people use the privilege they didn't ask for. I'm not talking about people who take advantage of their privileges. I'm not talking about people who do things like overinflate their privileges to the point of white supremacy. I'm talking about these privileges were laid down by people who control this society. They did it because they knew that, hey, we can treat any of them the way we want if we give them a little privilege. So black men getting shot all over the place, being put in prison, being falsely accused of stuff, well, give them the privilege of being a man. Black men were given the vote before women were. And if you want to be 100 about it, they were given the vote before white women were. And when that happened, all your suffragette leaders became Hillary Clinton during Obama's campaign racist. Because you can't find a thought piece written by these people where they're not maligning black people in lieu of their white feminism. The problem is this, you know, when I say these things have little grains of truth, that was a fucking insult to sit up there and give the vote only to these black men, not the black people, not women, not people, period, as some kind of apology for 400 years of slavery. I'm not saying they shouldn't apologize, but I'm saying we have to look at both sides of this issue. Otherwise, we cannot stop with these stupid labels. I don't give a damn if you're a Marxist as long as you're not a shithead. It doesn't matter to me if you're a communist. I don't like you shoving your dead white guys down my throat, but that's not a deal breaker. But we can still talk about the theories of communism if we just leave it at the theories. Just talk about the idea. What's wrong with that? And in the end, all these labels come down to sounding like religions. You are all pointing towards this same sky daddy. Why are you having a fight about it? Because it's not about the religion, it's not about the label, it's about the ego, and let's face facts here, it's about the control. And that's what we need to give up. We have to all get past ourselves. We're fighting the system. We're fighting the racism. We're fighting the misogyny. We're fighting the homophobia. We're fighting the aims to bring fascism to America. That's the real battle. Not you're an anarchist and you're a Marxist. Not you're a black nationalist and you're a, I don't know, an online content creator. When it's severe, like white nationalism, which is something a completely different opposite from black nationalism, yeah, that's a label we can't take. When you hear fake leftists lying about Fred Hampton going to a right-wing white nationalist group, the Young Patriots, and changing their minds, that's not what happened. The Young Patriots were not a white nationalist group. They were a hardcore leftist group. They were just using Southern pride aesthetics. And when Fred Hampton and the Black Panther Party in Chicago told them, yo, let's join together, but you got to drop the Confederate flag, they dropped the Confederate flag. They didn't write think pieces about it. They didn't go on TV or BCAT bitching and moaning about it. They just did it because they saw that the Rainbow Coalition had more value, more potential power than their damn Confederate flag. It's not that hard. You got to remember you are fighting something bigger than some dude who thinks he's a communist or some dude who overreads Stalin or Marxist theory. You're fighting a group of people who want to either exploit the hell out of you or outright murder you. Don't you think that's more important than if Nancy, the Twitch streamer, considers herself a tanky? I'm still not sure what the hell tanky is. They tried to explain it to me, but so I'm with Miko again. Let's drop the labels. Now let's talk about community cohesion.
Number 6, it's time to rebuild community cohesion. Start a block party, invite your neighbors over, maybe discuss a few local policies like the potholes or the speed trap at the end of your neighborhood. Build friendships with your coworkers and agitate unionization in your workplace.
Community cohesion carries a lot of weight and has some deeper meanings than what he's presented here, though he's absolutely right. We do need to come together in our communities, within our circles, and create better relationships. But for me, this speaks to intersectionality. In other words, we not only have to create local community cohesion, we have to create community cohesion between all of us. That includes anybody on the left side. And the stance that I think that we should take now is if you are diametrically opposed to what the right is doing, you're left. That doesn't make everybody the greatest leftist or the worst, but it is high time that we find the intersectionality in all things. And this is not nothing new. I am positive that Kimberly Crenshaw must have been rolling her eyes to herself when she gave that speech on intersectionality, because it's obvious. And the greatest impediment to us coming together communally as leftists is white leftists. No, I am not taking that back, nor do I feel bad about it, but you better consider that the greatest problem with cohesion between the black liberation movements or the grassroots organizations is black men, directly toxic masculinity, or as they call it, patriarchy. But when we try to come together with more community cohesion, the biggest wall we face is white fragility. Y'all keep doing the same things over and over again, and it's getting old, and then we're getting done with it. It's one of the major reasons why black people and other people of color don't trust you. And this goes a little bit beyond being a cis white male, because cis white females and lesbian females and transgender women all participate in this. Look, everybody makes mistakes, but not all mistakes are created equal. For instance, black people, just like everybody else, has been social engineered under this culture. So of course we picked up patriarchy and rape culture and toxic masculinity. Our whole values are based on that. You ever listen to people about my age talk about women? We are still telling that ridiculous joke, well, she's on the pole, that means dad did something wrong. How about she just chose to be on the pole? How about it's none of your business? And then everybody wants to talk about statistical data, which is actually personal stories about your friend's cousin's sister's brother's wife or something like that. And that doesn't fly. But really, on a broader sense, intersectionality, coming together, being a cohesive community on the left side, is basically impeded by whites' constant need to be white. Unions were held up because as soon as they say, hey, white, black, they're trying to take your jobs, all of a sudden that broke up. That held back so many unions, it's ridiculous. And at times you find the ones that didn't get held back, or the ones that suddenly started succeeding, that's when they cut that nonsense out. The whole Jamestown thing, where white came from, when the white workers and the black slaves were about to come together to tell the rich people, go screw yourself. And all the white people had to do was go, okay, let's make white privilege, and boom, that ended that instantly. And yet, it didn't change the material conditions for the poor whites nor the enslaved. So thank you very much, white people. I talked earlier about how we need to drop out trash. And I know if certain people are listening and hear certain names, so they're going to get defensive because no matter how trashy these people act, they want to defend them. Or I love the ones that stream and want to play whole videos of problematic people, and they're being told by their audience, yo, playing their videos kind of makes me uncomfortable, but they do it anyway because they have to be right. I mean, really, streamers, y'all got to come up with a better system. If you can't sit for a few hours and talk something or find something imaginative, why are you streaming? I know radio personalities that would get on air from 12 midnight to 5 or 6 a.m. and have something to say and talk about without having to replay another person's radio show. You mean you can't do that? When we say we're not comfortable with working with certain people, you just got to understand that. The cohesion means meet us both ways, but the both ways does not mean you get to force your thing down our throats. You do not have to be the first word and last word in everything. You do not have to put yourself in everything. You already have safe spaces, so you don't need to invade women's or black people's or people of color's safe spaces. And there's nothing wrong with the idea of safe spaces, but white people don't get to talk that shit because their entire civilizations are based on safe spaces. You've got to give up the idea of saying something and never really meaning it. Like, when y'all say, listen to black voices, listen to black women, and then it's still the last thing you do. White people, if we want community cohesion on leftist spaces, we have got to do the things that impede that cohesion. This is one of the reasons why I made one of my parts about throwing away the trash. To stop justifying trashy so-called leftist behavior. To stop holding on to these Jimmy Dores and these debate bros, especially when they keep performing bad action. I am going to reiterate, it is not about them having one bad moment or one bad take. They do these things continuously, and they are protected by your silence, and too often by your platforming. How are black people going to be comfortable if you keep doing shit like that? And if there's a way to litigate it, then you take the time to litigate it. This is important. Once again, we're fighting actual fascism over here. We're fighting people who literally want to build ovens. That's the whole right-wing agenda. So we have got to start getting past the things that are holding us back. And when it comes to community cohesion, when it comes to intersectionality, our biggest problem on that front is the direct attitudes of white people, and that shit needs to stop. And you cannot keep platforming right-wingers. This is one of the things mostly everybody disagrees with about debate bros, because they're not changing any minds. They're not doing anything spectacular. The only thing they're doing is platforming these miserable people. But the argument I always get about them is, well, they're doing a good job. Well, what job are they doing? Arguing with right-wingers. We could do that during a protest. If we're going to build up community cohesion amongst the left, you white people already point out every flaw black and people of color and women have. Y'all don't hesitate. Now it's time for y'all to look in the mirror, see what your own flaws, find what the problem with Blackout Tuesday was, understand it, and then come together where we can share the ideas, not constantly defer to y'all. The biggest problem between leftist community cohesion is white people. Hey, let's change that now. How about it? Now, let's talk about mutual aid.
Uplift some motherfuckers. Engage in mutual aid. People are more likely to help you if you help them.
Let's be upfront about this. Amongst all the theories of trying to fight capitalism that you have, mutual aid is your best one. Mutual aid is both the antithesis of capitalism, at the same time can work within and bring down capitalism. That's my opinion from everything I've read about it. Mutual aid, when it comes down to it, it's just people helping people. It's just that simple. So when you have a food pantry or a clothing drive, or helping for the homeless, or feeding the homeless, these are all examples of mutual aid. Now, socialism is already practiced. It's just that we have too many people in this country like to pretend like they don't practice it at all. Socialism is an equally good concept. Its only flaws is in its optics. Communism and Marxism has bad optics. I don't know why communists and Marxists can't admit this, but there are too many bad optics in communism. But mutual aid is not bad optics at all. It was what people practiced before European invasions. And mutual aid does not mutually exclude gaining wealth. It just, by its definition, means you cannot gain wealth selfishly. You have to put it back in to helping other people. Now let's tell the truth. People who are eternally online, which is everybody, but let's pretend like it's only a few or something, have been practicing mutual aid for the longest time. Patreon, no matter what the problems is with the company Patreon itself, is mutual aid. OnlyFans is mutual aid. When I get back to the point where I can do it again, I'm going back to donating to all my Patreons, and that includes content creators that I have certain disagreements with. But like I said, my disagreements with them are not what I'd call deal breakers. When you lend in donations or you help somebody or give into any crowdfunding campaign, that is mutual aid. Yes, these campaigns do take percentages. Yes, there's a lot of grift going on with some of these campaigns. That does not mean that it's exclusive from the definitions of mutual aid. There is not much to say. I would say read most of the things on mutual aid. There's plenty of organizations who are practicing mutual aid, and every day there's a new grassroots organization opening up or starting that simply practices mutual aid. When I pointed out in the voting section that we now live in a time that we can support any candidate anywhere, well, that is just a tacit example of mutual aid. So what's the problem? Well, I'm afraid that when it comes to mutual aid and capitalism, you're living in a catch-22 that's a little hard to escape. All you anti-capitalists would like everybody to stop practicing capitalism, but in order to do that, you also have to stop capitalists from practicing capitalism. You don't like landlords? Well, they exist. The best thing you can do against landlords is to collectively open up a building and use mutual aid concepts to keep the building going. That's what a cooperative is supposed to be, but because cooperatives happen to fall more on the side of capitalism, they end up with a landlord mentality. They don't have to. For instance, you can collectively get together and buy certain buildings. There are buildings that are just out there, they're just standing there, or properties. Then collectively bring the building up to code and then collectively use it as housing and shelter that people can afford. You do not have to gouge in order to make a profit being a landlord. The landlords got a bad reputation because of landlords, not because of anybody else, because of their practices. So living in the catch-22 where you are stuck in a capitalist system, and let's face facts, almost everything is a capitalist system, including Russia, or do you want to tell me again what the word oligarch means? So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to use the system you're in to get the system you want. There's no escaping that. You cannot go out into the woods and live off the land because that's going to cost you money. And then under capitalism, those woods are owned by somebody, be it a personal property, a state property, or a federal property. In order to implement mutual aid, the people have to do it. And we have to do it despite what anybody else has said. We can't ask people to quit their jobs, but we can ask them to donate to a legal fund. I'm not against people like Hassan buying a house because he's got enough people donating to him. That's ridiculous to be against that. What I am against is them bragging about their capitalism and never using the wealth and the privilege that they're gaining to help anyone else. Now, I don't know if someone like Hassan is helping anyone else. For all I know, he might be giving into like 500 Patreons. I don't know. All I can go by is the stuff I know. I don't watch him. He defines himself as a debate bro, and that's enough for me not to want to mess with his stuff. People tried to convince me that he's not the worst of all, but if you're going to come with any criticism, you're going to have to come with a better criticism than the man bought a house. Even content creators can create a cycle of mutual aid. If they're getting enough donations to their content, they can equally donate to other content creators. Even a simple thing such as what Thought Slime does, whereas he always points out smaller content creators near the end of all his videos, is an example of mutual aid that could help in building up the type of things we need to make this revolution actually happen. Mutual aid is not hard, it just takes the will. So homeboy is right. Help each other out. Because the fact of the matter is that people will be more apt to help you if you help them. And I don't see any reason under this country we cannot help each other in any way, shape, or form. Hell, I can't afford shit, but I can watch and like videos. I can let ads run. I can volunteer at places. I can help with political campaigns. Lord knows there's enough of them in New York State. So you don't have to lock yourself into one specific thing or one group of things. There are many things we can do in many different ways, but these things have to be done on and offline. Enough with the pretending like online is not real. That's ridiculous. These are people online, not statues, not robots, not AI. So mutual aid is the very thing that you anti-capitalists want to implement that could chip away and eventually replace capitalism. Once again, it's not easy, but in the end, the ideals are, if that makes any sense at all. Let's move on to the next suggestion.
Number 7, protests and demonstrations have got to be a confederation of organizations. From what I've seen from my IRL activism, these things go way smoother when we have a division of labor.
So let's start this discussion with protests by answering to one of the most infuriating things I ever hear people say. Protests don't work. Protests are just begging the man for scraps off the table. Protests are ineffective. Protests don't do nothing. That does not reflect you sound just as ignorant as you want to be. The fact of the matter is that every gain you got in this society was gotten through protest, including enslavement. The biggest problem, as I see, is that people overinflate protests. Protests are not the answers to the problem. Protests are not answers. Protests are the questions. You know that you are living in a society that is ruled by capitalism. The lifeblood of capitalism is privilege, which is why it operates through a system of isms, racism, misogyny or sexism, ableism, homophobia, transphobia. These things are used to keep people marginalized so that they can effectively use the trick of privilege to say, hey, you might have it bad, but these people have it worse. Do you want to be them? And then you can use the them by othering all these groups, be it a racial group, be it a sexual orientation, be it a religion that's being followed outside the norm of the current system. And they can use them not only as a cautionary tale, you don't want to end up like a poor people, aren't you glad you're not black? This is the game that this system plays with us. This is why everybody, in fact, has some form of privilege. The privilege is not to give you anything. The privilege is to keep you fighting over scraps. And it's also to keep you quiet. Once again, I come back to, If protests were so meaningless, why did they spend so much time and effort and money to squash them? You know what Cop City in Atlanta is mostly about? Protests. That's not about civil unrest. That's about shutting you the hell up. This is just like I said previously about what the right-wing goal is. All this harassment and dogpiling, yeah, they want to drive you crazy. Yeah, they want to throw off your game. But their number one goal is to silence you so they are the only voices in the room. And you cannot be silent. As many wise sisters have said, protests are good trouble. The protest is because you have to remember that when this system does something awful to marginalized people, you can almost feel them waiting for us to forget. Now, often it is not about us forgetting. That's kind of a misnomer, but that's how it feels. You know, when people say, you're protesting, you forget the issue in the week. But the object of a protest is to keep the issue or the incident on the minds of both the system and the people. It gets the word out because protests are a pain. They block streets, they hold up traffic, they hold up public transportation. They make you late for work or your meeting or your party. If you walk into them and the police are vamping, they might vamp on you too by mistake. That happens to so many people in the George Floyd protests. But you remember the protest, and then most of the time people connect it with the issue. Now here goes something that changed with George Floyd. Why George Floyd? I don't know. But what changed with George Floyd is that forgetting thing that hasn't been true in a long time. We are still saying Sandra Bland and Trayvon Martin and Tamir Rice. And we are bringing more and more like-minded people, including fence sitters, onto our side. Because people are waking up to the fact that if this country flips to fascism, whatever target they're pretending to go after now is not the only target. We know now we are all under the gun. This time, that totally includes you white people. What do you think they did with leftists in Germany when Hitler took power? Or communists? Don't even think about what they did to women. So this is what protests are about. Protests are to keep issues alive. They are not to solve every problem. Neither voting nor protests serve those purposes, but there is a purpose they both serve. Now, what I agree with MIcah Valentine is protesting has got to stop being a chaotic affair. We have got to start developing on-contact strategies, things that every group, or if the groups are together, whatever the issue, if the police shoot somebody, there has to be a strategy in place that needs to be adopted by every single protester. For me, the very first thing is take names. You're sitting out there, you're protesting. There are going to be periods where you are stopped. There are going to be periods where you'll be in front of a capitol, a police station, a governor's office, a senator's office. When you're going to be stopped, there should be a contingent of people whose only job is to get names, emails, social media handles, and possible phone numbers. What you need is a way to contact the people after the protest. The Women's March does that right now. I get constant emails on various women's marches happening all over the country. That's how it should be with every single protest. And not just emails, but social media posts, letters, in real life or IRL, as you kids say it, flyers and stuff. And this is where I piggyback off his division of labor. There has to be a clear-cut division of labor. Yes, you sometimes don't know when a protest will happen, but that is why you have to have the groups who are prepared for when it's happened. And we have to take a page out of the Black Panthers book. In one of the videos that I'm still in the middle of editing, but is coming up, I talk about remembering when Fred Hampton was assassinated. What you have to understand is that when the Black Panthers formed in California and the idea of what they were trying to accomplish took hold, they were everywhere. Equally, they put to use high-speed communication called the telephone to let each other know what's going on. Black Panthers divisions across the country, and by extension, the black community knew an hour later when Fred Hampton was murdered. That is the kind of thing we need to do. And of course, we're going to have to think in broad strokes. At some point, even if you're just taking names and emails, that's going to be a lot of information. Now, my suggestion is you take them on tablets. Writing was good in the 70s, and you got to stop it with the protecting yourself thing. You take steps to protect yourself, but I'm coming to that next. But tablets, everybody can type clearly. You could set up any app on the tablets to ask just specifically the information you need, and it saves into a database, which you can translate into a spreadsheet or a database on either a laptop or stronger computer, or just keep it on the tablet. You also keep your tablet off the internet. This is true for videos and photographs. Coming to that too. Hold on. You're going to have to remember that more and more police are going to be using what they call signal blockers. This blocks your access to internet signals. But your smart devices, including DSLR cameras, can work without being attached to the internet. But you should take them off too. For that matter, for everything I'm about to say, only put a as complicated as possible password to unlock your device. Take off facial and biometric access, because if the cops got you handcuffed, all they got to do is put your device in front of your face and they're in your crap. Set your screen time to the lowest set possible when not in use, and train yourself to be ready to get those names. And there should be a division of people that gets added on to, even if you have to do it Johnny on the spot, the bigger your crowd. But you should be going around the crowd and getting their names and their emails and their social media and their phone number if they're willing to give it. The reason for this is protests peter out for many different reasons. So what you need to do is address those reasons. Sometimes they peter out because people cannot spend all their time protesting. They've got rent, they've got children, they've got school, they've got a job. So when they come out, especially if they sustain, most of the time they're sacrificing stuff. But what do you do about the people who can't come every day or every time you call for a protest? Well, they might not be able to come out and march, but they can donate. They can offer services. They can offer referrals. They can pass along news. They can help social media posts spread. So you want to get the people who's at whatever the protest is informed of other things happening. And this is another way of building up your numbers. You take a lesson out of Online Marketer's book, Build an Email List. My suggestion is it should go on a desktop or laptop that is not connected to the internet. And when you want to use the feature like mass mailing or sending out to a list, then you use your thumb drive. There is a way to lock your MailChimp and your Constant Contact. Because yes, hacking is a thing, and the best way not to be hacked is to put all your good stuff in a place that's off the internet and in a secure location. Buy a safe. Buy a safe that the police or the FBI are going to work through to get in. Now let's talk about this idiocy about let's not take videos because you might be identified. Let me clue you in right now, okay? In another video, I'm going to be talking about COINTELPRO. COINTELPRO was a hard lesson, people. And don't get me wrong, brothers and sisters weren't stupid. They suspected that there was infiltration, the cops were doing a lot of crap. Hold on, let's stop there as I record this later because I realize I didn't finish the point about COINTELPRO and it needs to be injected. Isn't video editing great? But here's the thing. We thought, or the brothers and sisters at the time during all those protests, the so-called Civil Rights era, which I prefer to call the Black Liberation Movement era, they suspected. They weren't stupid, as I was saying before, but they didn't know. COINTELPRO was released by mistake. A whole confluence of things happened that led a small group of white hippies or socialists or radicals, whatever progressive thing they followed. They was going to stick it to the man by breaking into an FBI office and did not know what they had in their hands. Then they released it, and this was at the time when our newspapers did pay attention to stuff like that. Of course, the story itself didn't get huge headlines, but anybody who talks about anything that happened to the black movements of the 40s, 50s, and 60s and do not include COINTELPRO in the mix, I'm a little sus at what your sources are. We automatically say things that happen, but then you go read those COINTELPRO documents and you think to yourself, did that really happen? Like, for instance, did George Jackson actually kill a prison guard? Did you ever read the COINTELPRO documents and see what they had to say about the Black Panther Party and all the people they consider its leaders? Did you ever go look at the list of people they had on board that they actively worked to undermine in every way, shape, and form? It makes the argument between Malcolm X and the Nation Nation of Islam take on a whole new light when you realize there were agent provocateurs in there stoking the fires of these things. Because when you go look at what both sides says, both Malcolm and the Nation, it was like, what the hell is wrong with y'all? But then you realize, oh, wait a minute, maybe it wasn't anything wrong with them. Maybe it was COINTELPRO. This is important because what COINTELPRO teaches is how far these people will go. And there were many things that were happening towards the 60s and many things that confused us. Because COINTELPRO was not just the police and the FBI, it was also the media arm, which brings us into the rest of the rant about organized protest. Ever a demonstration would happen or Malcolm X would speak, they watched the news, they heard what these people are saying, they saw how corporate media was spinning things. I have seen it firsthand myself. I have come home from protests and demonstrations seeing one thing happen, then watch the news play it, and the way they described it, I'm like, wait a minute, that's not how it happened. This is what the right wingers do. You know them cats that go to Black Lives Matter protests during the George Floyd thing, and they would do a close-up of one car burning, and then on their TikTok or their YouTube, they'd be like, Black Lives Matter, burn city down. And they're doing the close-up of the car. Lucky for us, most of the protesters got wise to them and called them out before they could do that kind of damage, but that's the kind of shit they were doing. But what I want to get across to you right now is if you're protesting and worrying about being identified, you're protesting for the wrong reasons. It goes to the territory. I'm sorry, people, this is a fight. It's not a barbecue. We are at war whether you like it or not. As of 2016, the right wing has declared open war on anything non-right wing. Look at what they've been doing. And every once in a while, that war gets messy. The brothers and sisters who came before me, who ended back with a bus, which you might not think is a big deal, but ending that practice was a huge deal. Or look at it this way for you ACAB mofos. Ending that practice lost the cops one extra excuse to arrest and jail and mass incarcerate black people. Protesting to end Jim Crow allowed me to actually vote. That doesn't mean that the Democrats and the Republicans ain't gonna play their games, but they gotta play a new type of game because I am allowed to go to those polls. And rednecks are not allowed to give me tests, have a poll tax. No, that is what voting protections did. That is what the protesters then did. And I'm pretty sure that while they were getting their heads smashed in or being hit by water hoses or being sicked on by dogs, there was some idiot out there saying, protests don't work. I'm not calling Malcolm one of those, but Malcolm had an opinion. We should never deify any of our leaders, even the best of them. The dude wasn't perfect, and his take on protest was completely wrong-headed, in my opinion. But I'm pointing that out to say that there's a lot you can do at protest. Now, I went through all that stuff about identification because this is why we need to take the videotapes. Here's the fact of the matter. If you were born in the U.S., you've been assigned a social security card and you were fingerprinted and toe printed. You're already identified. The fact of the matter is that thanks to social media, they know your likes and dislikes. Privacy isn't dead. Privacy has just changed. With social media and the internet's proven that some of our privacy is just BS. Who gives a shit if you go to the park every day? But you're protesting to change the world. You're protesting to make a point. You're protesting to show them the numbers of people they're going to have to face if they don't start straightening up and flying right. You are not protesting to hide. What is that about? What do you think this is, Viva Vendetta? And once again, I'm going to stress this with you. You're really not hiding. They have a good idea on who's on the side of the system and who's not, who wants to change things. There's a reason why there are specific names that were assassinated during the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. We are not dealing with a stupid system, people. So why are you acting like that? Every time I hear one of you content creators like, well, okay, don't take pictures because, you don't want to get in trouble by the cops. Well, aren't you trying to make a point? Because they arrest you and they charge you with stuff like disturbing the peace or unlawful entry and stuff like that. And most of those charges can be made into more serious things, but for the most part, they're not serious. They know what they're dealing with. They fill the jails out. We get stuck in holding all night long in a crowded cell, but we make the best of it. Then they let us go. We see the judge. And let me tell you something, that particular experience, I don't care how many showers you take, when you have been marching from the beginning of the morning to almost the evening, and then you're stuck in a confined jail, the smells are not fun. But they do that for a reason. I'm saying all this to make the point that you cannot be protesting to hide. We need a contingent of people whose only job is to take video and photos. They have to at least understand the difference between a vertical and a horizontal video. That's all. Any device that's taking your video should not be connected to the internet, and once again, turn off biometric, fingerprint, and facial recognition. Do not give your device away to be open while you're tied down or handcuffed. And then maybe there should be a color, a specific jacket, a badge. But the division of labor, especially the videographers and the photographers, need to be identified. So if the police jump off, we have another contingent of people whose only job is to block their exit. They're the ones who are going to take the knots over the head so that the videographers can get out of there or get more pictures or get more video. Also have to remember that once again, they'll be using those signal blockers. Signal blockers tend to have about a 3-block radius, the strongest ones. I've researched and have now found one that could blanket a city. They only have a certain range. And you start getting a signal when you're just outside the range, like what they call an event horizon point. And you want your videographers to get out of Dodge so they can get their videos, so we need to post them so we can tell our story our way. We cannot depend on corporate media to tell the story of any protest, because corporate media is not going to handle it the same way. So the point I'm making here is that the notion of us not taking video is ridiculous. We live in a video world. We live in a world of images. Y'all keep telling me the attention span of the entire American public is only 30 seconds. Actually, was it 3 to 30 seconds? But y'all keep telling me no one has any attention span. So we need our videos because we need our TikTokers. We need our YouTubers. We content creators are looking for content, and we need to send them the content so they can report it the way we need it reported. Remember, rule number 1 is we've got to control the propaganda. We have to control the narrative. So it is absolutely important that we have our media people, the media section. And once again, if you know that you're going to have a certain amount of people, you assign a certain amount of people to that task. If the protest is spontaneous and bigger, you hire people Johnny on the spot. These are the things that we need to do with protests. And the more names you have of people who are willing to come in the streets and tell the system that they're pissed off at it, the bigger possibility you have towards the goal of either getting the candidates we want in office or forming that third party. All these things that me and MIcah Valentine said tie in together. They're all steps towards revolution action for change, because that's the game you're in. You're all part of wanting to change the system, and more importantly, wanting to stop the Republicans or the right wing's whole thing. Because if they get what they want, that's not going to be good for anybody. So that was the last one Miko talked about. I did not play the entire video. Go to the link in my bio. The video is worth it. Like and follow that brother. Share his stuff. Donate to his Patreon if he has one. He's one of the best content creators out there, and he's on our side, and thank goodness for that. Okay, this one's an addendum. This is one that occurred to me while I was making the video, and day turned into night. Yeah, you saw the changes. I started in the morning, then I looked up and said clean up. But I like what I said in the video, so I know it didn't look like continuity, but hey, it's the same chair, right? There's one more thing I think the left needs to do. And this is inspired by YouTube content creator Mexi. She started this channel called PLN, Positive Leftist News. It's one of the things we absolutely need. And this is what I have to say. Celebrate our wins. I know this world is a dumpster fire right now, but the left wins stuff. Even when Trump was in office, the left was kicking some ass. He couldn't do everything he wanted. Trump came into office like he thought he was the king of America, and there's a hell of a lot of America that said, nah, no, you're not. That's why most of the damage he did was to himself and his followers. Yeah, he did some bad things to the economy, but the Democrats have proved hundreds of times they can recover from it, and let the Republicans ruin the economy again. It's a cycle. This is how they work. This is why I compared them to that cartoon about the wolf and the dog punching in before they did their separate things. But we have wins out there. Another thing you have to remember is that when you study history, you not only study history to count the tragedies, you're also seeing what was done to stop tragedies from happening, to gain things. We have a lot of successes as leftists on every sphere and every level, and we should teach that too. I mean, communists and Marxists do it because they totally teach that stuff without mentioning at all these guys were virulent racists and really high-class misogynists. Somehow they skip that part of Stalin and Marx and Kropotkin. So if you can do that with them, we can do that with everything. I am not saying do not report the bad things. We got to know what's going on out there. That has its place. What I am saying is that also you have to put more equal weight into the good things that happen. If you have the right people doing their jobs right, anything can trend. I'm not against knowing when the police have shot somebody. I understand the complaints about that, but I think the importance of it outweighs the negative, i.e. the fact that we have so many fake left content creators who use it as some kind of like torture porn thing, making money off a black tragedy. But I still think having the video ourselves, getting it out there, making sure we control a narrative is the best way to handle that. But since we're also trying to control a narrative, we do not have to be like corporate news media. We can balance all our crap out with the good stuff and the bad stuff. My point is that while, like I said, we do have some bad things that are happening out there, but we have good things happening out there too. So yeah, it's trash out there. But to keep people's spirits going, it's also a good idea to maybe tell them, hey, we're doing something about it and you can help. And here's how. Every message should in some way incorporate that structure. Something is happening. Here's what we're doing. Here's what you can do. And if we can figure out how to put that into a little information package and add the positive news, I am sure people will react to it. I am not believing that the entire population of this country only likes trash. I agree that trash tends to trend and make the money, but I also agree that very positive things that make money too. I am just saying that there is power to a positive message. So that's my final message on this video. Let's put out positive messages too. Let's celebrate our wins. Thank you very much for listening to my ideas on leftist radicalization and the things that we can do to make it happen. I'm just one guy. That's my opinion. Next up, I'm going to be talking about Cornel West. Trust me, it isn't what you think it is. Or maybe it is. Depends on how well you know me. Thank you very much for watching. Follow my Patreon so I can keep doing these works. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all the things. And I'll see you next video.